Thanks, David. Thanks for joining us today. So, just for introduction, David Giller is an attorney turned Salesforce guru. I have known him from almost a year now, and we have also worked together. So, it is a pleasure having you, David.
Thank you for having me.
So David, just to start with your Salesforce journey. That is hashtag your Salesforce journey, the name of the show, as you call it. So how did this happen? Like, how did you turn into Salesforce guru, and how it started? Just can you guide us through that?
Certainly. So, of course, the abbreviated version, which is a little bit shocking to everyone, is how did you go from being an attorney to being the Salesforce guy, this, Salesforce trainer, consultant, etc. And there were a lot of different steps, and it took many, many years to go down that path. But essentially, I'll bring you back to the year is 2004. And by 2004, I had already stopped practicing law. So yes, I'm still an attorney. I'm still licensed to practice law. And no, I was never disbarred from practicing law. So I voluntarily stopped practicing law and I pursued various different careers that were more on the business side. And when I say that, I was involved in various roles at various companies where there was
Mhm.
pretty much always this intersection between business management, process improvement, technology, marketing, operations, and basically those concepts. But in 2004, actually, I take it back. It was 2000. It was the year was 2000. I took on a job at NBC. NBC, it was before it became NBC Universal. At the time, NBC
Mhm.
was owned by GE. And the job
Mhm.
interview was for a job that was essentially being a project manager in the IT department of NBC. And even though
Mhm.
that role had nothing to do with any CRM, it had nothing to do with Salesforce, I learned a lot of the critical skills, which I think we're going to get to in a little bit, the critical skills that I think that every Salesforce professional really needs to have. For me, it happened by accident and it happened a little bit backwards. I gained those skills first before I even knew that Salesforce existed. So I took on this job where I learned skills around process improvement and around project management and gathering business requirements and change management and everything around even the concept of UAT testing, what it meant to gather business requirements, hand them over to someone else to actually build out configuration in some system, and then confirm, did this actually meet your business requirements, managing the scope of a project, all of the communication challenges that come along with running a project,
Mhm.
and especially along the lines of any IT related project with stakeholders and subject matter experts that knew nothing about technology and they could not care less to know anything about technology. So I was doing that for about 4.5 years. Then in 2004, I left NBC to go to a different division of GE, which was GE Capital. And that's where, during the interview, I learned what a
Salesforce.
CRM was. I had no idea what a CRM was.
And
I
this was
went
which
in for
year?
2004.
Oh, okay. Okay, long back, huh?
Yep.
Almost 20 years.
Yes. So during the interview, the woman who was interviewing me was basically telling me, and it was not Salesforce, it was a different CRM called Siebel. And she was explaining to me how they're using this tool called Siebel for sales. And
Mhm.
basically, they were looking to hire someone to help with a new initiative around rolling out Siebel marketing and Siebel analytics. And as I mentioned before, I had extensive knowledge and experience around marketing and marketing processes and marketing strategies and marketing automation. And I knew a lot about project management from an IT perspective. But even during the interview, she
Mhm.
kept referencing CRM, CRM, CRM. And I stopped her during the interview and I said, hang on, you keep saying CRM. What the heck is a CRM? And she explained to me customer relationship management. It's a database that we use to keep track of customers, prospects. I'm like, okay, I get it now. I was just thrown off by the terminology CRM. And anyway, I got the job and I was responsible for the rollout of Siebel Marketing and Siebel Analytics at GE Capital. They already had Siebel sales, but not these other two components. And along with that, I started, after I rolled out Siebel Marketing and Siebel Analytics, I then also became responsible. And when I say became responsible, I was not the only person. There was a large team supporting GE Capital for the Siebel platform. But I also inherited some responsibility for Siebel sales. And then fast forward a couple of years, and that same manager who interviewed me turned to me and said, so we're moving off of Siebel onto this tool called Salesforce, and we start on Monday, and you and a couple of other people are responsible for doing this project, and let's get cracking. And I turned to her and I said, wait, but Siebel's not broken. I don't understand. What the heck is this tool called Salesforce? Is it one word or two? Why are we moving? I don't understand. What are we doing? And she turned to me and she said, none of that is your business. Just we're starting on Monday. And that's where I started to learn Salesforce by Salesforce employees. So the year now was about 2007. And Salesforce employees came to our offices at GE Capital in Danbury, Connecticut to teach us Salesforce. And I completely fell in love. It was the coolest thing in the world because from my perspective, I saw both from the end user perspective of how intuitive the system can be for them by hiding or displaying the things that they needed. Keep in mind, this is way before Lightning, so this is Salesforce Classic. But how you can have unique page layouts and unique, even from a field level security perspective, with roles and profiles. Permission sets didn't exist at the time, but how you can really control what each user sees based on what their responsibilities are within the organization, as well as from an administrative perspective, from a configuration perspective, how you did not need to know any coding and how incredibly simple it was to create page layouts, to enhance the underlying database architecture itself. I don't remember. It's possible that at the time, custom objects did not even exist. I don't remember, but custom fields definitely did exist. So you can create custom fields, you can create pick lists, independent pick lists, and just seeing all of that was like, whoa, this is the coolest thing in the world. So I totally fell in love with it. I completely embraced it. And then sure enough, once as we were rolling out Salesforce across the multiple divisions of GE Capital, because of my enthusiasm, my immediate falling in love with all things Salesforce, that came through, and everyone in the company, for better or for worse, would refer to me as the Salesforce guy. And I was actually annoyed by it, but essentially I felt that every time anyone in the company had any question that involved the word Salesforce, the answer was, you got to talk to David Giller. He is the only person around here who understands this thing. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Everyone knows I train you people.
So
Anyway,
Trailheads existed then,
that's
or
say it again?
Trailheads existed then, or no?
No, there was no such thing as Trailhead. The way we learned Salesforce was by reading PDFs that were hundreds of pages long. So
Salesforce
when
documentation.
I wanted to learn, like essentially it was hard to take notes even during this on-site class that they gave us. It was essentially the admin boot camp, and at the end they gave us these vouchers to sit for the certification exam. None of us cared about ever getting certified at the time. None of us cared about that. We just needed to learn this thing to do our job. And for me to feel comfortable with even what I just learned, and because I was not able to take notes, I was trying to absorb so much information, I printed out the PDF, and it took several. I found the thickest binders we could find at GE, and it was either 2 or 3 of those thick binders that I was carrying around with me, bringing it home on weekends, and just trying to understand all of the underlying functionality. Yeah, it was PDFs. Old school. It was all old school.
No, I think PDFs are still a great way. Sometimes I also don't find a solution. I probably tend to go to those PDFs, search for the keywords, and you get all your answers there. So in fact, yesterday what happened is I was going through this marketing cloud, right? I went through all the YouTube videos and everything, and I had to install this marketing cloud app in my Salesforce.
Yeah.
And that marketing cloud URL for the app everywhere, which was listed on all the YouTube channels, was kind of redundant now, and it went to a 404, right? And then I searched for the the Salesforce documentation on Marketing Cloud. There I found the link of that. That app got updated or something, so the link got changed.
Yep.
Documentation are really helpful, and I think those are a great way. I think you currently also follow that, right? Whenever you want to learn something, just go through a Salesforce
Yeah,
documentation.
whenever I want to learn something, my first place is really to go to Trailhead or to go to one of the Salesforce, the official Salesforce YouTube channels.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't realize there are multiple Salesforce channels that you
Yeah.
can access. So that's definitely my first go-to place to find any answers. If not, I'll just use Google in general and see what comes up in the search results. But at the
Right.
same time, you have to take everything with a grain of salt because the answer is only as good as the person who posted whatever answer you're about to read. And that person there might have been various nuances in the way the question was posed for that person, which might not apply for you. So you need to take all of that into
Right.
account when you're using Google, similar to any of us. You get a paper cut and we go to
Yeah.
Google and say, oh my gosh, is it skin cancer or is it a paper cut? What do I, depending on what you search for, that will dictate what you get. So you can get all kinds of
Yeah.
crazy stuff, but you can get
Agreed.
some really good advice there.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you get really good advices, and sometimes the answers are not something you're looking forward to. But yeah, still you
Yeah.
get some glimpse of maybe what other problems can be, right? So you get a solution for the problem you don't have.
Exactly. And honestly, it's funny that we're chatting about this because this is something that I personally have found there is a tremendous amount of content online right now to teach people how to use the Salesforce features. For example, how to use Flow, how to convert process builders to Flow, how to convert workflow rules to Flow, how to do the following XYZ things in Flow, how to use the various features that just came out with the blah, blah, blah release. So there are a lot of people, and I think everyone is doing an amazing job, but there are currently so many wonderful resources of knowledgeable, enthusiastic people who are teaching how to use various Salesforce features and Salesforce products. And that is amazing. What I'm also seeing at the same time is that there is a huge gap. There is a void in the Salesforce ecosystem today, which is not teaching people how and when and why to use any of those features, or
Right.
any focusing on any of the other, which are often referred to as soft skills, or the business skills that are absolutely critical to being successful in any type of Salesforce role in your career,
Role,
even if the
yeah.
word Salesforce is not in your job title. So for example, you might know how to use every feature that is available as an admin, as a
Hmm.
developer, how to use every feature in, let's say, Sales Cloud, Service Cloud. And you are a professional working in an organization where you are responsible for supporting the platform. And when a business leader turns to you and says, hey, I want you to do the following. We have certain kinds of people that we want to track in the database. Can you create a custom object for me? And here are the fields that I need. Here, you see, this is my spreadsheet. Here are all the data points that I need. Create a custom object. I want that only I should be able to see these records. That's why I'm asking you to create it as a custom object. And here's my spreadsheet with all of the data. You can see all of the fields. It's clean. There are no duplicates of any kind. Please go ahead and do it. And many Salesforce, this is just an example, by the way, many Salesforce professionals don't know how to handle that situation. Like, wait a minute, the CEO is asking me to create a custom object for people, but we already have the standard object of contacts. Creating a custom object might not make the most sense. It might not necessarily be scalable. But they're asking me to create a custom object. I know how to create a custom object. I want to appease them. I want to say yes to them. I want to show them that I'm capable of doing it. I could do this in my sleep. He already gave me all of the fields that I need and gave me all the data that I need. So most Salesforce professionals will feel in some way under duress or compelled or pressured, whatever words you want to use. They will feel obligated to follow through and create this nonsensical
Custom object.
customization, that creating the custom object and following through with it. And they know that it's not the right thing to do. And they know that it's going to, at some point in the future, come back to bite them. But in the short term, they are looking to impress the CEO. They're looking to show the CEO, I did what you asked me to. You asked me 10 minutes ago, it's done. It's already done. It's
Yeah.
created. You want to impress them. And that's where so many different skills come into play, negotiation skills and communication skills and process management skills and change management skills and problem solving skills, to be able to even ask the question in a way where you're confident to ask, wait, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? I hear you and I'm capable of doing that and I can do
Yeah.
that, but I think it's going to cause more problems than what you're asking for. What is the problem that you're trying to solve? Why do you want this in Salesforce? So it takes a lot of different skills that, generally speaking, most people are not focusing on within the Salesforce community. These things are not necessarily prominent on Trailhead. These are the things that people are not necessarily, creating additional content for
So
Salesforce professionals. And that's where I'm focusing a lot on these types of issues and problems and how to solve them.
no, definitely. I think this is part of the solutioning, right? So you should be aware of, it is not about creating a custom object like any I think second class or a third class guy can go ahead and just click few buttons and create a custom object. It is more about when to create a custom object and when to use the standard ones, and what data needs to be stored, how to manage the sharing with the existing objects we have, rather than going it and creating a new object for CEO and COO, right? So that is probably data duplication as well, because you'll have to ultimately go ahead and store it in the contacts again. So great example,
Exactly.
David. Coming to my next topic of discussion, a lot of people who want to enter the ecosystem, or a lot of newbies, they are really confused about where to start from. There are a lot of content, right? A lot of exposure to content. Maybe some is irrelevant, some is relevant, right? Some is from Salesforce. And the problem with Salesforce documentation, it is really boring. So you tend to fall asleep after 15-20 minutes. I personally do, until unless I am in a, I am trying to solve a problem and I'm very passionate
Right.
about it. Otherwise, I,
Right.
I tend to sleep a lot. So where should they start from? Are trailheads the right path to it, or trailheads have the enough information to get going, or they should focus on trailheads along with some documentation? Like, what is the
So
recommendation?
yeah, it's a great question. There, so I would say, depending on where a person is coming from and what they're looking to accomplish, that's what will dictate which resources or where they should turn first. So Trailhead is definitely way up there, should be maybe the first thing that they look at, maybe the second or third thing that they look at, but it's definitely high up there on the priority list, because in the end, there is a tremendous amount of content on Trailhead that explains even, what do we mean by an admin versus a developer? What is the role of a developer or a business analyst in the Salesforce ecosystem? So a lot of that content, a lot of those answers are already there. What does a day in the life look like for someone in one of these types of roles? And then in Trailhead, there's also the trail mixes and the trails that will show you how to get there. We'll also show you what certifications, if any, are appropriate in order to get there. So Trailhead is absolutely high up there on the priority list in terms of the content that you should look for in order to get a sense of, all right, I'm new to all of this. I really don't know much about Salesforce. So where do I turn? On the flip side, what I'll also say is it can feel incredibly overwhelming, totally daunting for anyone that is new to Salesforce. You go into Trailhead, you don't even know what terminology you should be looking for. You're still trying to make sense of the differences between a Salesforce admin versus a Salesforce developer, but somehow you clicked on a trail about being a solution architect. Why? Because some terminology or maybe the graphic that was on that page brought you there. And suddenly you're going down this path, and then you realize that, oh, this is information about how to be a solution architect for Marketing Cloud, not even Sales Cloud, which is what to the newbie, they don't even know what is the difference between these tools. How do I even know what the differences are? There are so many different terms and concepts that are being applied here. So it can absolutely feel overwhelming. I would say my my best recommendation to try to make sense of all of it is, while you are going through Trailhead to absorb all of these terms, it is the best thing that you could possibly do is try to get involved in the Salesforce community. So what that means is looking for local Salesforce community groups. You could also just Google Salesforce user groups, Salesforce developer groups, Salesforce admin groups. Many are still meeting virtually. Some are meeting hybrid. Some are meeting in person. And you can start joining these groups, whether it's in person locally or in a virtual setting, in order to even just listen to what they're presenting on, to listen to some of the other questions, meet some of the other people, start talking to them. And this way it will fill in a lot of the gaps of whatever it is that you find overwhelming or confusing from what you found on Trailhead. And what I will also say is, don't ever feel limited based on whatever you find on Trailhead. And the terminology that we see on Trailhead, don't feel that those are the only options whatsoever. What do I mean by that? Let's even take my background, for example. So I happen to have a background in the legal industry. I also happen to have a background in process management and process improvement and project management. I can land a job at any company simply with that background and those skills. If I wanted to be
Right.
working within the Salesforce ecosystem, just take any of those. I could pick just one. It doesn't even have to be all of them. Any one of those skills or areas of expertise or niches or industry knowledge, and apply that to a company that happens to be using Salesforce. So it could be a company that's in the legal sector. Now, by the way, when I say that, it's not only law firms. There are legal publishers. There are all kinds of other companies that maybe they are tracking the various laws and changes in the laws, the different regulations that are coming out, and they happen to use Salesforce. Maybe they're using Salesforce to track the laws. Maybe they're using Salesforce to track their constituents that they're interacting with, whatever it might be. So I can take the background in law, simply apply it to an organization that
And add
fits
value.
within that industry that happens to be using Salesforce. And there are a multitude of roles. None of those job titles have the word Salesforce in them that I could potentially have. It could be an operations manager. It could be a business development manager. But having the background and knowledge and experience in those areas and apply another layer on top of that of Salesforce now gives me a set of very unique skills that I can apply to that job. And even if the job initially does not involve rolling up my sleeves to configure Salesforce, once I start to demonstrate my knowledge, my expertise in Salesforce, as well as the day-to-day business operations of what we do, chances are that someone's going to say, hey, we should make this guy
Can
an
you handle this?
admin. Can you actually set it up for us too? So there are essentially, you can chart your own path to get a job in the Salesforce ecosystem, whether you are brand new to the workforce or you've already worked, you're a mid-career professional where you've already worked in various roles in various different types of companies already. You have knowledge, you have expertise, you are familiar with certain things. You might even have certain areas of tremendous interest. Maybe you've never had a job working at a dog shelter, but you have a tremendous passion for managing dogs in a dog shelter and making sure that they all get
Definitely.
homes. And you can apply that to your knowledge or a passion in Salesforce to find a job at an organization that is doing those kinds of things that happens to be using Salesforce. Or they're currently using spreadsheets, and you could be the one to bring them onto the Salesforce platform.
So if I just sum it up, it is probably more about a domain knowledge, right? If you have the domain knowledge, you can probably leverage that to enter the Salesforce ecosystem. And I think probably Salesforce is something you can learn, but domain knowledge also carries a lot of weight, right, and value to it. So that is really
Tremendous
important.
weight.
Uh,
Yes.
yeah. I know a lot of folks in the ecosystem who have kind of great industry knowledge, and that kind of swings it away. As Salesforce is also launching these new products like the Health Cloud and Marketing Cloud and Education Cloud. So these are like industry focused. Like if you have knowledge on that, that is really helpful out there.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, so David, I have a very interesting question, which I personally take a lot of advice from you on. It is so there are a lot of layoffs these days, right? So a lot of layoffs happening. Google is laying off 12,000 people. Amazon has laid off 18,000. It is hard time for a lot of folks on LinkedIn. We get a lot of posts saying impacted by layoffs and stuff like that. What do you think is the value of personal branding when it comes to such situations? Like, do you think personal branding can protect you from such things? Because I speak to a lot of people. No, nobody's really bothered about personal branding, giving back to the society or giving back to the ecosystem, right? So I know we have been talking about this from almost couple of years now, and I take a lot of advice from you in terms of my personal branding. So I'd just like to know your
Yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah. Personal branding is so incredibly important. And most people, and it makes sense why most people don't care about personal branding until they're in crisis mode, until there is an
Yeah,
issue where they need to find a new job. And that's unfortunate. But at the same time, if you find yourself in this demographic right now, please listen carefully to what I'm about to say. Yes, you still need to find a job. And yes, it's a little bit late in the game uh, to build a personal brand in order to find that immediate job. That's sort of like someone goes to the doctor, they get the diagnosis where they have diabetes. And the reason why you have diabetes is because you're severely overweight. You can't go back in time to lose the weight to not get this diagnosis. There are things that you can absolutely do. You still have this diagnosis of diabetes. You still need to take care of it now and over the next few weeks and next few months, etc. But there are things that you can absolutely do starting today, moving forward, so that you are no longer in this zone with this diagnosis where you can think of it as graduating from this diagnosis of diabetes. So where you're no longer in the zone of being in crisis mode to look for another job. So this is the important moment where you need to consider, do I want to, or how do I protect myself from being in this crisis mode again in the future? That's what personal branding is all about. And
right.
I'm telling you this not because, oh, I'm smarter than anyone else. This is exactly where I fell into the world of personal branding and why I started to care about it so much. Because when I was at GE Capital, so keep in mind, I was at GE Capital from 2004 until to about 2015. And in 2007, 2008, the world was going through a terrible financial crisis.
Right.
I was in a B2B financial services company. Guess what? One of the reasons why they went off of Siebel onto Salesforce was to save a ton of money so that they can consolidate all of their databases into one. It should be cloud-based, eliminate all of the people who were responsible for the hardware that was supporting Siebel. There was a tremendous amount of employees who were responsible for maintaining the hardware. So GE was doing a lot of layoffs. We knew when we were
Yeah.
learning what Salesforce was, we knew that this was part of the game plan. We're going to get laid off too. Guess what?
Hmm.
Practically everyone at GE Capital got laid off. So I was, as I was in the middle of learning Salesforce and deploying Salesforce to everyone on the team, I was also scrambling to figure out, how am I going to get my next job? And what am I going to do from a personal branding perspective? So how did I even know about the term personal brand? As I was looking for job hunting advice, that's where I first encountered the terminology of personal
Of course.
branding. I had no clue what it was. And I had no clue how it can help and how it applied to me, why I should care about it. And that's where I learned that personal branding is basically the marketing that you're doing of yourself. And some people feel very self-conscious about this, but hang on, bear with me. I'll explain how you can do it without being self-conscious about it, where you are basically marketing yourself on an ongoing basis to people who care, so that this way, when it if and when it does come time, and by the way, you're not doing personal branding exclusively for this purpose, but this was the initial thing that got me into personal branding. I need to find a job. I need to support my family. I'm about to get laid off. I don't know if it's going to happen next week, next month, or in 2 months, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen soon. I'm watching everyone get laid off all around me. So personal branding is about basically identifying for yourself, how do you want to be known within this demographic, within the world, to your target audience, within the world that you live in? What is it that you want to be known for? And how are you going to go about doing that personal branding? And think of it from the perspective of, don't think of it as bragging, because most people, like myself, when first introduced to the concept, I thought like, I should be freaking bragging. I'm like, that's not me. Like, I
No, it's
don't
not
want to
about it.
do
Yeah.
that. It makes me cringe and run in the other direction. But instead, think of it in the following way. Even if you are brand new to Salesforce, I'm going to bring it back to the context of Salesforce. And by the way, this is exactly how I did it myself. As I was brand new to Salesforce, as I was learning, oh, there's this concept in Salesforce called formula fields. Oh, what are the different things that you can do with formula fields? How can it solve various business problems? So even if I had never yet created in production a single formula field, but I did create one in a sandbox or in a developer org to simulate a use case. So as you're doing that, guess what? There are people who are in the same place that you
Oh,
were
yeah.
before you uncovered this piece of information. All you need to do, it's not saying, oh, look at me and how smart I am. No, you need to create content, and you
Create
can do it in
content.
a lot of different ways. And now it's way easier to do than when I was doing this in
I
2000,
know.
first started doing it in 2007, where you can start sharing online, social media, for example. Hey, there's this really cool thing. I am blown away right now. There's this really cool thing that Salesforce has, and it's called a formula field. And while it might seem incredibly boring in terms of what you can do with it, similar to a formula in Excel, here are the different ways that you can solve business problems with it. So watch this. And now you can share on your screen. I have to do it with like screenshots, etc. And simply share, here's how it works, here's how it solves a problem, and start putting content like that online. And by doing that, people are going to see it. When people start seeing it, and you have to do it consistently, when people see that you are able to solve all kinds of problems, and you're not doing it with a message of, hire me, I'm so smart. By the way, I'm looking for a job. No, you're just saying, here's this piece of information. Here's how I can help you
Take
with
it.
this new thing that I just learned. I just learned 5 minutes ago. And you can share that in a genuine, authentic, excited way. It gets other people excited, and it also starts to position you as the person who happens to know about these things, whatever the content is that you're sharing. And by doing that consistently, you are now, that is personal branding. And you're not doing it in a way of saying, oh, look at me and how smart I am. You're saying, I'm brand new to this. And this is what,
Yeah.
there might be other things that I don't know that might smack me in the butt later. But here's what I know
So,
right now. So you're being authentic by explaining, I'm not trying to be an expert here, but here's what I do know. And if this helps you, awesome. If not, you can unsubscribe or block me. That's fine.
no, David, I think yeah, personal branding is really important, and I also realized this a couple of years ago that it is kind of really important to put it out there that whatever right, it may be wrong, maybe incorrect, or maybe correct. If it is incorrect, you will get to learn a lot, right? A lot of people would start commenting on that, and if it is correct, then somebody else would be benefited from
Exactly.
that. Perfect. So before we end up this call, David, I would like to one last piece of advice you would like to give to all the newbies who want to enter the Salesforce ecosystem.
So what I'll say is this. Salesforce as a company and everything that we see on Trailhead, they're going to highlight tremendously the badges, the certifications, and learning how to use the features. Yes, that is absolutely important. I am not at all negating that. But if I can get any single message across to everyone who is watching and listening to this, is you need to give equal weight to things like project management, communication skills, business management skills, problem solving skills, change management skills, gathering business skills associated with gathering business requirements and keeping the scope of your project intact, and even learning how to do public speaking. As a Salesforce professional, you
Really
will need
important.
to speak in a meeting with other people, and it's going to feel a little bit intimidating. You're going to need to explain why what they are asking for is completely nonsensical and a terrible idea. Those are public speaking skills. You're going to need to learn all of these other skills. And as far as I'm concerned, if you want to be successful in your career, that needs to have equal weight to knowing how to roll up your sleeves and do whatever it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Soft skills are really important. Thanks for that, David, and thanks for your time. It was great having you on the show.
Thank you for having me, Sanjeet. It was great chatting
And
with you.
likewise, and I think we should have another session on the multitasking tools you use. So it is a one-man army, I know. So let's have that as
Absolutely.
well.
We can totally do that.
Perfect. Thanks for your time, David.
Alrighty, thanks.